All right, people. Now we're going to talk about cross elasticity of demand. So this is the question of how much does the demand for your good change, or for one good or product or whatever, change as the price of a different product changes? Because things affect each other, right? So if Mars bars become loads more expensive, I'm going to be more likely to buy Kit Kats because suddenly Mars bars, they might be my preferred chocolate, but they're more expensive. There's a cheaper Kit Kat. I'm just going to go and do that. I'm just going to go and buy that. They're similar products, and so therefore I'm quite likely to just switch over. So what we'd call them is substitutes, and they're reasonably close substitutes because I can just get one instead of the other. If I'm feeling my cheap chocolate itch, then I can pick between a Kit Kat and a Mars bar. Another substitute that might be a bit weaker, it might be less of a close substitute, but still somewhat, might be different sports, right? If I'm wanting to exercise, maybe I can go for a run, or maybe I can play tennis. So tennis shoes and trainers are going to be somewhat kind of competing for people's attention, for people's purchasing. So both of these goods, well, if one of them becomes more expensive, then people are going to be more likely to buy the other one. So the cross elasticity, X for cross, right? Cross elasticity of, so that should be a demand, a D. That should be the change in quantity as the change in price of, let me label them, good 1 and good 2. It's the change in the price of good 2 or product 2 changes. So in the case of the Mars bar and the Kit Kat, we would expect this to be quite elastic. If the Kit Kat becomes more expensive, then we would expect that the demand for my Mars bar might actually go up quite a bit, because, hey, I'm just going to get the Mars bar instead of the Kit Kat. I know I switched the order around, but you're just going to have to cope with that. So in contrast, if I'm talking about tennis shoes and trainers, yeah, they compete a bit, but there are also people who just prefer tennis to running, or there are weird people who prefer running to tennis as well. So that might be somewhat elastic, but it's going to take a bigger price increase for it to really shift people's behavior and what they're buying. So they're going to sort of be substitutes, they're going to sort of be competing, but not as closely, and therefore the cross elasticity is going to be weaker. It's going to take a bigger price increase, a bigger denominator, to get the same change in my quantity here. So that's a sort of basic overview with substitutes. With when they're the same, then it's going to be positive. So substitutes, we're going to see positive. We're going to see positive cross elasticity of demand. And the closer the substitute, the higher the XED. Because the more that the more extreme there's going to be a change in quantity. So as they get so close to substitute, it's going to rotate clockwise. But that's kind of difficult to remember. I personally don't really remember it that way. I think there's going to be a bigger change in quantity. So it's therefore going to be flatter if we have quantity on our x-axis. That's how I think of it, but you could also say, hey, it rotates clockwise because that's what achieves this change in shape. So that's that. The other thing to think about is, what if goods are complements? So complements are goods where you buy them together. So I used the tennis example. A great example is a tennis shoe and a tennis racket, or a tennis racket and a tennis ball. If I want to play tennis, I need these things. But so therefore, I'm gonna want to buy them together, and I'm gonna want to see, well, how expensive is tennis as a sport? I'm gonna weigh up all these things. Okay, I need the racket, and I need the shoes, and I need the balls, and what does that all add up to? So if suddenly rackets become more expensive, and I'm thinking about should I take up tennis or not, well, I'm gonna be less likely to take it up because the price of taking up the sport's gone up. So therefore, I'm less likely to buy the tennis shoes. So in that case, as the price is going up, I'm actually going to be, let me label my price for good 2, so that could be the tennis racket, and then the quantity of good 1, so that could be the tennis shoes. And so as the price is going up, as we're going up on the graph, the quantity is going to be going down, just like with a demand curve before, because it's kind of part of the same package. And if it's more expensive, I'm going to be less likely to buy into that package. And there are other goods that work as complements as well, and sometimes they're closer than other times. So, for example, if a laptop becomes more expensive, I might be less likely to buy the weird big headphone things that you get, because typically when do you get them? You get them if you're going to do a sit-down laptop meeting or gaming or whatever it is. And if the laptop's more expensive, well then I'm less likely to get the thing that I typically get with the laptop. There'll be other examples that aren't really coming to mind right now, but I think the tennis example is quite nice. Any activity where you get things together, probably chess books and chess books would also be complements, or ties and jackets, like suit jackets and ties. They kind of go together, but when you buy a suit, generally you're not buying a tie with it, right? You've got the navy suit, for example, and then you buy the tie separately. But if suits are more expensive, then maybe people are more likely to say, I don't really need a third suit, not bother. And also, if they were wearing it less often, wearing suits less often, then they're less likely to wear ties as well. So that is also given to us here. So typically, when goods are complements, which we spell like this for some reason, then we would also say that the XED, the cross elasticity of the demand, how much the quantity of one good changes with the price of another, we would say that that will be negative because it's increasing the cost of the whole package of doing this activity. So cross elasticity of demand is how much the price of one good is affecting the quantity of another. If they're substitutes, well then, hey, I'm more likely to switch good. And so it's going to be positive. The closer the substitute, the more that it will affect my demand for the second good, because the more that I can just swap them out. Here, if they go together, it's going to be negative. And again, if they go very closely together, well then it's going to have a bigger effect to my quantity. So it's going to be more negative. And if they don't go very closely together, then it's only going to have a weak effect. So that's a quick run through of cross elasticity of demand. I'd recommend going back through this if you really need to know this thoroughly. But that's that.